Hey everyone. Well, I just finished with a Gothic picnic here at the city cemetery in Nashville, Tennessee. And I also found out about a moment ago that there may have been an attempt on the life of former President Donald Trump. It doesn't matter to me what partisan label you have for yourself. It doesn't matter to me which person you're supporting for president, or if you're completely apolitical and just don't give a crap about the election, I can respect that as well. But I think we can all agree that political violence or violence of any sort is not acceptable in a free and civil society. Because once you have violence, anything goes. And the violence that you think is justified against a political opponent could one day be used against you. So you really have to really think about what you're wishing for, and that it could come right around and bite you in the rear end. One thing I noticed at this picnic was that there was a distinct lack of political conversation going on. You had some music playing, people were talking about their personal lives and just general fun and spookiness. And that was a great relief for me, because I don't come to these kinds of events to talk about politics. Talk to Goths in the online TikTok community and you'll get a decidedly different point of view. Many of them believe that you cannot be Goth unless you are to the left of centrist Democrats, that you have to be progressive, socialist, communist, whatever, as long as you're anti-fascist, because they automatically think that if you're right-wing or conservative, you must be fascist, which is really not true at all. They argue that Goth is political and that those politics are decidedly left-leaning. Anything to the right of socialism, well then you must be a fascist or a crypto-fascist or a fascist sympathizer, and therefore you have no place in the Goth community, which is absolutely 100% incorrect. They say that Goth has always been political, and you know, to an extent they're correct. Early Goths in the UK came from the punk scene, and the punk scene at the time was rebelling against privatization, really bad economy brought on by, many say, Margaret Thatcher's administration. And I can believe that. I was around in the United States, but I remember those days. I remember the days of the Falkland War and that sort of stuff. And so they're correct in that aspect, that the original Goth community tended to be left-leaning. But that said, it did not make the Goth community de facto liberal, leftist, whatever. I've been around since the 1980s, and I remember hearing about the early stages of the Goth community when it started building up. I remember early post-punk, etc., etc. A lot of the OG Goths that I know all say the same thing, that while there was some leftwards leaning in the politics of many Goths, it wasn't some sort of monolithic belief system that you had to have in order to be in the Goth subculture. In fact, many were apolitical, meaning that they just did not like politics. They thought politics sucked. They thought politics is some sort of oppressive system, which I agree with. And many were of the anarchist persuasion. Politics of the UK was much different from the politics of the United States. Different countries, different cultures, different issues at play. And you cannot say what was happening in the UK can be translated to the politics of the United States. What about conservatives, those who are to the right of socialism, that group of people that they believe are so evil? You know, I'm a libertarian at heart. I'm not a conservative, but the political paradigm has changed so much that anymore libertarian is viewed as right-wing. In fact, the definitions of conservative and liberal or leftist has changed significantly over the past 4 decades. Things have changed a lot over the last 40 years. And what applied then does not apply now. In fact, there's been quite a realignment in terms of politics. There's been a paradigm shift of monumental proportions happening. Many people say that the new punk rock is actually the right wing or the conservatives. And really, what is conservative anyway? I have no idea. It's just a big mishmash. It's a big tent of people who just are rebelling against the authoritarianism of the left. What are you talking about? Yes, authoritarianism. It's not a matter of right versus left. It's a matter of authoritarianism versus freedom or liberty, if you will. Political labels are obsolete at this point. I think they're largely meaningless. And so I go by the authoritarian versus liberty or freedom axis. I don't like the right versus left. I think it's totally meaningless at this point. Look at this wonderful structure. I noticed this while I was walking around taping this video. This is why I love cemeteries so much. Arguing that Goth is political and that those politics are left-leaning is simplistic and a little stupid if you ask me. If you really insist on injecting politics into the Goth subculture, I would argue the most rational way of doing it is to say Goth is anti-authoritarian. And it really is. I mean, when you look at the roots of Goth, its historical origins, it really wasn't right versus left. It was anti-authoritarianism. Authoritarianism transcends both the left and right paradigm. It is the use of power and privilege against those of us who are in the private realm. Authoritarianism tells you what you can and cannot do, how you can dress, what you can think and believe in. And believe me, there's people on both sides of the aisle, both left and right, who are chomping at the bit to control us in their own vision of their particular political utopia. But you also need to realize that leftism also harbors authoritarianism. It requires force for their particular agenda to be enacted. The same applies to right-wingers, especially the more, should you say, reactionary right-wing. A lot of them have their own ideas of utopia, and that requires the use of force against you and I to achieve their particular political goals. I reject the use of force, and I think most people actually reject the use of force. They just want to be left alone to live their lives however they so choose. Just recently, a school in El Paso, Texas, stated that those who dress in black harbor criminal intent and are prone to self-harm, which is patently ridiculous. This is the kind of nonsense you get when you put your lives in the hands of politicians, left or right. Believe in whatever you want, and I support your right to believe in whatever you want. I just don't support people telling others how to live their lives and using force to achieve their own political and social goals. The moment you advocate for the use of force to achieve whatever political or social goal you have is the moment you become an enemy of free thought and free choice. No matter what that choice is, as long as it's peaceful, it's good. I would urge my friends and fellow travelers in the Goth community, the Goth subculture if you will, to think twice before you start saying you have to believe in a certain political agenda to be involved in the Goth community. And the squealing you hear in the background is a train. I'm right next to the train track here. So I guess, you know, it comes with the territory here. So remember, Goth isn't a political organization. Goth is not a political belief system. So if you're one of those people that's saying you have to believe a certain way to be Goth, I question your agenda. I question your ulterior motives. Start becoming more accepting of those with differing points of view. Again, as long as they are not trying to force their belief system down your throat and force you to live a certain way or to think a certain way, then they should be free to involve themselves in the Goth community. I support conservative Goths. I support libertarian Goths. I support leftist Goths. I support Goths. Just don't try to transform the Goth community into your own personal political organization. That's all it really is. That's as simple as you can get. Peace out and goodbye.